It's amazing when I see um, Jesse Jackson. You see people like Al Sharpton and all of these other charlatans that are around. Um, you never see him take any stand. You never really see him stand up for anything unless it could get him some spotlight, or unless it's something that he'll wait until America, his endorsers, his endorsers, he'll wait till America is leaning toward an opinion, and then he'll endorse that opinion. He'll endorse it once they're leaning on it. Now, you look at, he's recently said something against, or rather said something for Bill Cosby. He said something for him. And he asked, what is he doing in jail? In the sense that they don't really have anything substantial to hold him there. And that's true. And also, not to mention that COVID-19 is a danger to his health. It's a danger to his health. So to follow the lead, this is what they say. So get him out of the prisons. They've gotten everyone else out of the prisons. And I understand that and defend it. Because I think that Bill Cosby is very useful for our community. And I think he'll be even more useful after this ordeal, because he has been baptized into the revolution, and he's no longer a coon. Now he knows that all whites are against him. They're not going to stand up for him. They found something, same way they do everyone else, to make positive contributions to the black community. They'll find something on him and try to destroy him. And no matter how weak the validity is, no matter how long it's been since those things may have transpired, without any proof, white people in America, at the top level, all the way down to the bottom level, are racist and are living by white privilege. So anytime they cry wolf, the farmer is coming to find out what's happening. So I said that to say this: Jesse Jackson is standing up now, speaking for him, since there are other whites that are wanting to know why he's being held. Jesse Jackson is speaking up for him, an opportunist. I can never get past what Mrs. Coretta Scott King said, or in respect, Dr. Coretta Scott King said to Steve Coakley and I when we were doing the research about the assassination, or concerning the assassination of her husband, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I've always had very high respect for her. I respect her opinion and anything she has to say, because she'll never say anything that she's not standing behind. But it was no secret. What I'm about to tell you is no secret. That she didn't trust Jesse Jackson. Because they had proof that James Earl Ray didn't kill Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They knew that he was smothered in the hospital by the head surgeon. The bullets did not kill him. He was smothered in the hospital by the head surgeon. This was common knowledge. Common knowledge. And for some reason, as God would have it, he had one of the doctors to report this information to her, and it got to her. It got to her. That's how much respect many of the white people had for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, he was the white man's friend. The only friend that the white man's ever had among the black race really was him. He meant what he did. And God sent that prophet with that message. Now, that message is gone now and worn out from shining. It's gone. But there's no way you'll ever bring it back, because black people see white racist people and white racist America as it is. But what I'm saying is, I can never get past what Miss Coretta Scott King, she knew from her own lips. Steve Coakley, Professor Steve Coakley, and myself was doing the research on the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And Miss Coretta Scott King knew that Jesse Jackson helped in the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She knew it, that he and Billy Cow helped. And this is from her own lips. That's why she just wanted us to do an investigation, to keep it going and to find that information. And I had so much respect for her, the way she handled herself. But she had no respect, no trust for Jesse Jackson. She knew how dirty he was. And the black community still don't know. A lot of them just don't know. Black people really don't get it. And he's such a coon. I mean, to set up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., when there was no flights to go out, once he set the death up, made all the arrangements for the hotel room and all of that. And if you get the book Shakedown by William Peppard, who was the lawyer that handled the case in the Supreme Court for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife and his family, Mrs. Coretta King, Dr. Coretta King, said she did not believe that James L. Ray killed her husband, and that she believed it was a conspiracy and that there were those that were involved. Jesse Jackson was one of the ones that was named, and not without proof. This was proof, brothers and sisters. So how much more do you think Martin or Dr. King would have told his wife once he found out? Dr. King, and I want to bring this up because we're going to be talking about this very soon on a discussion panel. Jesse Jackson's actions and the part he played in the death of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And you know how these devils do. Once he dies, all the information will probably come out anyway. But on the day that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was to be shot, he was shot with a 30-06, and against popular publication, he was killed at 3:06, and he was in room 306. This is a fact. This is a fact. Something they cannot deny. Jesse Jackson was the point man set up to do the phony pointing. And he pointed to the building across the street. He was the one that did it. When Dr. King was shot, he knew exactly where the shots were coming from. He wasn't even up there. Wasn't even up on the balcony because he knew. And Ralph Abernathy was supposed to be shot, and Andrew Young too, initially. But the sniper, when he got Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he most likely panicked and just withdrew. But there was a shot that come from the grassy knoll that hit Dr. King under the jawbone line, but it passed through his neck. Didn't cause any considerable damage. It did not hit a carotid artery, so he did bleed profusely, but it wasn't a major artery. And the other shot came and passed through the bottom of his cheek and went out the other side. So these shots cross-section to make sure that it was done, that the job was done. And Jesse Jackson made the arrangements for it. Billy Cow solidified the arrangement, who was working with the Memphis police and the FBI. Billy Cows and Jesse Jackson helped arrange a perfect assassination for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When those bullets did not kill him, he got to the hospital. This is common knowledge. All you have to do is check with the Smithsonian or the Freedom of Information Act, and you will find the same information in the information that we have submit. And it was proven that the federal government orchestrated the entire thing and the key players. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his family won a suit. He posthumously, of course, won a suit, and they awarded the suit to Mrs. or Dr. Coretta Scott King. But Jesse Jackson played an integral part in that, the government's plot to assassinate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was the third person to be killed in the arrangement to have the four horsemen of politics, to be killed, which was the late President John F. Kennedy was number one. The second one was Minister Malcolm X. The third was to be the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the fourth, as you know, on June 6th of 1968, was the Senator Robert Kennedy, who announced that night, after he heard about the death of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he announced the killing, the information he had received, and pull the people together. We're still pulling the people together. This is how much influence and honesty was between all of these men. That was between all of these men. And that time is past. But Jesse Jackson still lingers. And he is very much responsible. Very much responsible for the death of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is a shame. Every time I see him, I can't respect him. Just can't do it. Knowing the part that he played. Knowing the part that every day that I wake, I pray that he's gone, that he's given up the ghost, that he's gone from this earth. That's my prayer. For everyone that is evil, that would cause people to get killed, that are only trying to fight for the right of the black man's humanity. Fight for black man's humanity. You got devils that would do this kind of evil. It is such a tragedy, such a shame that something like this would happen. And he's still around. He's complicit. But he was named the heir apparent. He was named the heir apparent. So when Dr. Martin Luther King had passed, Jesse Jackson never held him in his arm. Ralph David Abernathy did that, and also Andrew Young, minister or Reverend Andrew Young, they held Dr. King and tended to him until the authorities got there. Jesse Jackson rubbed the blood on his turtleneck, got the first plane out, which was arranged by Pete Rosenbaum, who was there to make the announcement about Jesse Jackson being the heir apparent to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a news reporter that was the Jew that was helping to arrange that. And when they got there, they made the announcement, and Dr. King was dead, so he was no more threat to national security or the business as usual in America. And one other thing I want to say, Jesse Jackson was told to wear a turtleneck. Billy Cowell also wore a turtleneck. And the word got to Dr. King because one of the agents was convicted and told his staffer, and it got to Dr. King that the federal government told all friendlies to wear a turtleneck. So any of the ministers that were wearing turtleneck were not supposed to be shot. But any of the ones that did not have turtlenecks on were to be shot on sight. So Dr. King and his entourage were to be shot so that way all of them would have been stopped immediately and they wouldn't have to worry about any other rise. But we'll talk more about this, talk about the arrangements that and the research that myself and Steve Coakley did. And I've also put out the actual film of the lecture that Steve Coakley did and the arrangements that we did together at the King Center. And this was years ago. I believe it may have was in the 90s, of course. But it was years ago, and it may have slipped people's mind. But I just thought that was something that I would a tidbit that I would just put out to get the gears going again, and to let our brothers and sisters know what's going on. You should know what's going on in our community.